discover where you are. Okay, so let's delve into, what do you mean by negative emotions?
Well, negative emotions are really interesting. Everyone is now going to be saying, well, positive emotions are very interesting. But here's the thing about negative emotions is, from my point of view, in terms of how long I've been working on assisting people, one of the key things that's been shown to me time and time again is that negative emotions always outweigh positive emotions. So if we're looking at a scale in terms of how many negative emotions do you have in a day opposed to positive emotions,
Yeah.
Negative emotions tend to outweigh the positive ones. And so that begs for why. And this is where the neurological side comes in, is you can't have any emotion unless you either have a thought or an experience. And if you're having an experience, you're giving the experience thought.
Okay.
That is the catalyst for any emotion that you have, because what it'll do is it'll introduce an emotion to you. So you have a thought and an emotion follows. And so if we start looking at what thought process a person has that causes the amount of negative emotions, you'll find that the negative thinking stream is far greater than the positive thinking stream. And this is where a person's self-observance of themselves is pivotal to being able to redirect their life, is to become aware of how many different negative emotions they have that are attached to their thinking. Because if they're going to change that, in other words, if you really want to have a positive life, a better life, you have to change the negative thought stream into a more positive thought stream.
You get to. Choice, right? I love
Yeah.
it. Very cool. So the negative emotions scale, how do you, that's something that you actually use in your work. It's one of the first steps that you do when you're working with someone with the neurological addiction, which again, it's all of us, so and then beyond. So tell us a little bit more about that, how yours is different too.
Well, the negative emotional scale is not a new concept. That concept's actually been around for quite a long time. It's not widely used, though, in terms of how accurate it is, because it actually is very accurate. In the negative thinking, there is a starting point and an ending point. The starting point would be anxiety, the fear of the unknown. So that is what anxiety is. It's the fear of whatever you don't know.
Right.
So you become anxious about it. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. I don't know where this is leading to. I don't know whether I'm going to be good enough. That's anxiety. And the end of that scale is powerlessness, depression, which means you've exhausted all other negative emotions and you've ended up saying, nothing works, I'm finished, there's no good, it's hopeless. That's powerlessness. It's when you're kind of throwing your hands in the air and saying, I don't know what to do.
Yep.
And so what's interesting about the negative scale is it moves from anxiety to frustration, to blame, to hate, to anger, to resentment, and so on. And it's building up towards powerlessness.
Right.
And then on the opposite end of the scale, if you were looking at anxiety being the starting point of negative emotion, hope is the starting point of positive emotion. In other words, yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm kind of keen to see what's around the corner.
Right.
I think things are going to work out well for me. That's hopefulness. And so it's a very light emotion. And from there, you move on to inspiration, passion, and so on. So there's a scale at which you can determine where you are on that scale. So if you're depressed, you're right at the bottom end of the dream pool in terms of emotion. And it tells you that you've got quite a lot of work to do in order to get to hope. Because here's the thing, most people want to jump from a really bad emotion to a good emotion. And actually, it's impossible to make that leap. Mm-hmm. Because you have to work your way through that process. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that you need to spend time with each negative emotion going backwards. Right. But you have to understand it took you a while through your thinking to get you to that point. Now you have to change your thinking in order to be able to work your way back to being hopeful and then becoming inspired or having positive expectation for life and then becoming passionate at what you're doing. You can't just automatically become that. You can try and pretend, but I can tell you what, it's a pretense and it's not last. It won't last.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love the work that you do. And it's only like in 2 sessions that you can really catapult people and get them going and walk them through a self-assessment, the negative emotions scale. Is that right?
Yeah, well, one of the joys in terms of what I do is I spent a lot of time in the world with a lot of different people from different walks of life. So, I've been with the extreme addict. I've been with people who have eating disorders. I've been with people who have psychosis. And then on the other end of that, I've been with CEOs of large companies that are wanting life coaching. And with millionaires who have a good grip on life, but not sure on where they're going. And so having spent the last 10 years being with people has put me in a great position, because when I sit with an individual, it's very easy for me and quick to assess where they are with the methodology that I use. So within a short space of time, we can have a look at what needs to be activated where, and I can come up with a strategy very quickly in terms of, well, take this prescription, this is not medication, but take this prescription in terms of what you need to do. Go off and do that, and you're going to feel better. Right. And so people do that and very quickly reposition themselves.
Yeah.
This is why having a guide is so important, because you sometimes you need to have someone to point out, hey, look at this, and this is where you should be. This is how you get there. It just makes that whole process so much easier than trying to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love is how in tune you are with women, whether they're career women or even home with their kids, or at home, kids are in school and then they get kids back again at the end of the day. You really understand how busy they are, how little time they have to implement things. And that's why I love your 2-session, 6 days in between process to just get them up and running and on the right track again.
Right. Just out of interest, Linda, the woman aspect of work, 80% of my readers are women. And what was interesting for me, and this is just something I don't speak about a lot, but most of the professions that I ended up going into professionally were 95% women and 5% men. So for some reason, I just had a lot of women around me. And when I was in the magazine industry and I was doing magazines, and these were nationwide magazines, so it's like Cosmopolitan, Fair Lady, and various different magazines that there were for women in South Africa. The entire platform was driven by women. So I would at stages have 26 women around me, being the only male. So I got to understand women from a very unique point of view. And I'm pretty sure that added up to my empathy for women and what they go through in life.
Yeah. And even women whose kids are just starting college, right? That's like a whole
Yeah.
other stage where you just start taking a look at yourself and going, wait a minute, right? You just all the distractions of even like driving them to their events or whatever start to lessen, and it's a time when a woman starts to really tap into, well, who am I without my kids, and what do I want to be doing with my life, kind of, right? Emotional.
Yeah, I think so many women lose identity in being the caregiver.
Yeah.
In other words, everybody else comes first, and I'm last on that list. And slowly, over time, one loses identity. In other words, they end up in that position of, I don't even know who I am or what I like or what I want.
Yeah, and especially ones with trauma in their background, they didn't know in the first place. All they, and they didn't even know this, but all they knew was that they were the adultified child, right? And then they get that figured out. Yeah, there's a lot of digging deep, especially when women hit their 50s. When women hit their 30s, it's like they're like, some of the wounds from their mothers, so they don't really dealing with their mothers, and so like I'm Cancer, so I'm like mother and nurture, and I do so well with women in their 30s because I kind of replaced mom, so I've got the guidance for them, but not the extra mom baggage.
Right.
At the moment, yeah. And then women in their 50s, like, who am I? Who do I want to be? What do I want to create? Time's running out. Where did all my friends go? Right?
I've heard it all.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So build a life based on your positive preferences. So tell us a little bit more in that area.
Okay, well, just in short, I spoke just now about negative emotion, negative stream of thinking, and how that outweighs a positive stream of thinking. And so it's kind of logical that if you're thinking more in a negative stream, that you're not really thinking about your preferences. The preference is a very misunderstood word, because preference means, what do I personally want? What would I prefer to see? And it's a personal thing. So think about it this way. If we're talking about women who have lost their identity, in other words, they don't know who they are, how can anyone expect them to choose out of their preferences, because they don't even know what their preferences are? They haven't given it thought. So part of the process is self-discovery. In other words, it's becoming observant enough to know, hey, wait a minute, do I really like that or not?
Yeah.
Is that something I want to focus on or not? And so that starts changing things. So I'm a big advocate for the word preferences. It is the core of the work that I do, because I feel that if you're going to have any spiritual growth, it's going to come from within you and who you are.
Right.
And that's the most important thing. In other words, if you're not being the best version of who you are according to yourself, you're not going to feel good.
No.
So personal preference is everything.
Yeah, it really is. And when my husband and I were going to do an event, we were given this big sheet of all these different genres for music to choose from. And I'm like, I don't have any preferences. I like all music. And then I started playing stuff and I'm like, well, I don't like that. Oh, I don't like that. I don't really like that. And it was like going through what I didn't like allowed me to see what I did like. And that was in my late 50s. Let's do like Crazy Town. It's like, did I even have a favorite color? And it's like, well, purple seems to have, been the thing most of my life. So like I went with purple. That's my favorite color. And I see that with women as they're, kind of like branding themselves or whatever. It's like, if they don't know who they are, they don't like have any particular color. They're like all over the board. If you go out to their Facebook or whatever, in their photos or little memes that they've chosen, the color range is like not even on one palette whatsoever. Colors that coordinate with each other. They don't know who they are. They don't know then what their color choices are. It's interesting.
Well, you know, just you're 100% spot on here, and what a lot of women tend to do is relinquish their right to choose.
Yeah.
So hubby will say, "Hey, I think we should go out for dinner, and what do you think will be a good idea?" "I don't know, honey. You choose."
Yep.
And that's relinquishing your right to choose. So then they end up sometimes at a steakhouse where they could have perhaps been sitting at an Italian restaurant, you know, and the steakhouse is noisy, and a woman is trying to get away from the noise. And so they lose out on their preferences, and then they feel a little bit bitter because, you know, hubby's got a steak, he's got a big potato, and he's got a beer in the other hand, and there's all this noise going around. Yeah, I can see the eye candy. It's just not adding up. And then goes home and says, "Well, that was great." And so the point that I'm trying to make here is when you relinquish your right to choose, life's going to flow in the direction of whoever's choosing.
Yep.
It's not you. And so personal preference is key. It's key to any relationship. It's key to any destination that you want to get to in life. Because if you want to get to a destination, you certainly want to end up being there saying, "Wow, this stimulates me. This is good. This makes me feel a lot better about who I am." And so you can't negate that.
No. And a woman's power is in her happiness.
Yeah, but sometimes it's a bit confused because sometimes her happiness is the happiness of everybody that's around her. In other words, she gauges it on that.
Hands down. No argument there. I love it.